The power of the dark side.
All right, hello, welcome everyone to Star Wars from the Bacta tank. I am Michael, your host, and with me today is David. Hello, Dave.
Hello there.
Okay, so we're back to just being a duo, which I'm okay with that. Sometimes Thomas tends to be really negative about everything.
The balance of the force within the studio is now split in three. So when we have multiple people, especially if like you have Thomas, who is a Sith Lord, so
Is he though?
he's a very angry man.
I think he's just a wrench. He just fucking gets thrown. All right, so David, the Acolyte trailer was... What am I talking about? Hold on. I'm trying to jump into topics way too soon. Let me set the table for today's show. So basically, what we're going to be doing today, Dave, is we're going to be sorting through all of the information that's available on The Acolyte, which is going to be premiering on Disney Plus in just a few short weeks. And then we're going to move into a discussion on a general discussion on the current season of The Bad Batch. We're not going to go into a deep analysis as of yet. We're going to wait until the season ends. And once it comes to an end, we will then do a full discussion, analysis, review style episode where we get into the ins and outs of the storylines and the individual characters. All right, Dave. So the Acolyte trailer. It scores 51 million views in a very short time. So the 90-second promo scored 51.3 million views across all platforms in its first 24 hours, as announced by StarWars.com. This is the highest number of any Star Wars series on Disney Plus so far. They added the highly anticipated series takes place 100 years before The Phantom Menace, and we'll focus on a Sith villain. Okay, David, so the reason why I want to start with the trailers, because that's really all we have to go on when it comes to the Acolyte, but that has not prevented the Star Wars trolls to already get angry about pretty much everything they saw in the trailer, which, listen, everyone who listens to our show, David, knows that you and I also hold, Kathleen Kennedy and Iger's feet to the fire.
Yeah.
We're not shills for Lucasfilm, but I also like to be fair. And even though possibly they don't deserve our fairness at this point because they've done a lot of, or I should say they've made a lot of poor mistakes and miscalculated numerous times when it comes to the content they are offering Star Wars fans. But still, let's wait until the series airs before we start slinging mud and throwing tomatoes
and flinging our troll poo everywhere.
Yeah, let's wait a bit. Now, on that note, David, I do want to hear, because I am very intrigued. You and I have not really discussed this at all. The only time we've had a chance to discuss this Acolyte trailer so far since it aired was when we were talking about how comical it was, how quickly everyone got really angry. Including people on this network.
Yes.
Which I don't even need to say the names of the individuals for people to probably figure out which ones were upset the moment they pushed play on the trailer.
That's the thing, yeah. People hate watched the trailer, and I'm like going, why are you hate watching something we have no idea about yet? Yes, it's a trailer. That means that we don't know the exact details of the story.
Yeah, let's wait.
Let's wait.
So, David, give me your initial thoughts on the trailer. What was surprising? What are you looking forward to? And also, let's round it out a bit. What might incite some fears?
automatically, when I watched the trailer, I thought the trailer was very interesting. Like, nowadays, I try to actually curtail my expectations. You know, like, I remember back in the day when I first saw the trailer for Phantom Menace, and it blew my mind in the theater, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I look at Star Wars, and I'm more like
Reserved
about it.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, with Acolyte, it still was a very interesting trailer. Like, okay, we're getting more Jedi stuff. It's set 100 years prior to Phantom Menace, so that's cool. We're going to see the establishment of possibly the Sith. Cool. Seeing all the Jedis just basically confused at what the heck is that, and then a red saber just ignites. That was cool.
Yeah.
Because it gives me a lot of vibes of like Old Republic. Like, I remember like back in the day when Knights of the Old Republic released their MMO trailers.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd always have that iconic moment where the Jedis are fighting these random troopers.
The cinematic sequences.
Sequences. And then you'd get this foreboding like figure dressed in black just walk up, and then the key moment of the trailer is they ignite their saber, and it's a red saber. And you automatically know that is a Sith Lord, and he is going to kill everybody. That's the same vibe I got here.
Yeah.
Where you have all these Jedi who have done all these amazing, you know, we saw some amazing fight choreography in it, and then they're all stunned when the red saber shows up. And that's like been a Star Wars trope that I love. It's a very, you know, like spaghetti western-ish, samurai movie-ish trope where the lone fighter shows up and all these other fighters are doomed. That's the way I felt about the trailer, and I was like going, okay, I'm very excited to see what they're going to do. Now it's about their execution. And that's what afterwards I was telling myself is like, I like everything I'm seeing here, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to, okay, are you going to execute it well?
Yeah.
My one fear that I had after I watched the trailer maybe a couple times off and on, I think fans, the one thing that I'm worried fans are not going to understand is, especially since I see a lot of the trollish remarks done on Acolyte, everyone's like saying, "Oh, this goes against canon." No, it doesn't. It goes fine with their canon because this is 100 years before the prequels, meaning it's based on High Republic.
Yeah.
If you haven't read High Republic, I'm sorry, you're going to be a little confused what's going on.
Yeah, we'll get into those potential canon issues because that's an interesting thought, David, that this may not go against their canon.
Their canon.
Now, people might say, well, there's only one specific canon, and that is true. What David's trying to say is that in order to understand how this could work, you probably have to either wait for the show to come out or have some knowledge on the High Republic and how they're working their stories. And
automatically, the funniest part by far is like everyone was losing their mind about certain characters in the trailers, and I was like going, no. I recognize those characters because some of those characters are from High Republic. Yeah. Like the Wookiee Jedi Master.
That's the one I'm looking forward to seeing.
He's from
Learning
the High
more
Republic.
About. Yeah.
And I'm like going, those are the characters that we're going to be seeing, and that's their type of story that we're going to be their setting that they're establishing.
Yeah. So Dave, I'm pretty much siding with you when it comes to your analysis of the trailer. I really didn't get angry about much in the trailer. In fact, I didn't get angry about anything. I had a few concerns dealing with the final line about power, only because it's so in vogue now to talk about power structures, and the reason why that makes me afraid is because I'm hoping they're not going to try to build this allegory or metaphor for white colonialism because it's played out and I'm tired of it. But I'm willing to wait to see what they do with that. Now, we do know that if we're dealing with Sith, power is at the center of what the Sith is all about.
Yes.
So you can also look at that final line as something pertaining to the Sith itself. The concerning line was, this is not about good and evil. This is about power and those who are allowed to use it, essentially. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And that line's a bit concerning. And I'll get to reasons as to why we could calm down in just a moment once we start interpreting what that actually could mean when you're looking at the bigger snapshot, or I should say the larger snapshot of the Star Wars landscape at large.
Yeah.
The trailer itself, overall, I thought it looked pretty snazzy. It was nice to see some techniques and choreography that we haven't quite seen since the prequels.
Yeah.
Also stuff that we've seen in the animations. I hope that the overall product itself is written well, because my only problem with Ahsoka, it wasn't necessarily a story. The story itself was fine. It's the way the story was shaped.
Executed.
The execution of the overall series was actually quite poor. It wasn't great how they executed the series, but what they were trying to do, the attempt at story and the bulk of what was trying to be attempted was just fine. It's just Dave Filoni needed some more writers in that room to help him shape his
ideas.
The overall structure of the season. But going by just this trailer, Dave, I don't really have a lot of concerns yet. There's just not enough to go on. But what I saw, I did like. I like the fight scenes. I do like that they're trying to go with more of a martial arts flair, which I think a lot of us Star Wars fans, we miss that. Because that's in large part how the prequel trilogies and everything moving forward after that has been shaped around that type of fighting. So we'll see what we get, right, David?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that's the thing about this trailer, especially since to me the trailer just got dropped out of nowhere, and it was like there was no fanfare about it. They just released it in the morning and then just left it be.
Yeah.
And then everyone just let social media work its magic.
Yeah.
And
I just think people are quick to get angry nowadays because we're all very cynical and pessimistic.
I think so.
I mean, my brother, within 5 minutes of the trailer being released, one of my brothers sent me a message that said, this should have been called the Acolyte.
The Acolyte.
And I rolled my eyes.
Yes.
Because
yeah,
I'm like, dude, the trailer is 90 seconds. There's nothing woke about the trailer. If you think the inclusion of women makes it woke, then I feel sorry for you.
You know what's sad?
Because that's not what makes something woke. Woke is an ideology, and we don't have enough in 90 seconds to see whether or not wokeness is being embedded within the narrative itself. Let's wait before we start casting woke stones.
The sad thing to me is it's amazing to when I actually saw the trailer and I compared the reaction of this trailer to Phantom Menace. When Phantom Menace first came out and it was a trailer, people would go to different movies to go just see the trailer.
Yeah.
And be excited about it. And, everyone would go, oh, I'm going to check out. I remember I went to go
watch Wing Commander.
To see the trailer of Phantom Menace. Yeah. And then but nowadays, people automatically do the opposite. Mm-hmm. They'll see a trailer and then they'll shit all over it before it even comes out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of I think that's partly Disney and Lucasfilm's fault because
I'm not saying it's not their fault.
Yeah.
Listen, they've done it to themselves.
They've done it to themselves, but also the fans need to also take a step back and say, hey, it's just a trailer.
Yeah.
You can trailers are just meant to be hype.
Yeah.
Bring up the hype. And if you fight against that hype, you're just going to ruin the experience for yourself.
Yeah. It's true. All right, Dave, so let's get into the ins and outs of what we know about Acolyte, because since the trailer dropped last week, there's also a lot of PR that has followed. The showrunner has been talking a lot. Various actors have been talking a lot. They're obviously not giving away spoilers, but they are doing their job. They're out there doing the work you have to do when you're promoting a movie or a series. Now, the series takes place, just to help situate our thoughts. We should give a little bit of context behind the narrative and the storyline itself. The series takes place 100 years before the franchise's prequel trilogy during the High Republic era of the Star Wars universe, which is the furthest back in the timeline Star Wars has gone in a live-action production. An official logline for the series reveals an investigation into a shocking crime spree pits a respected Jedi Master against a dangerous warrior from his past. As more clues emerge, they travel down a dark path where sinister forces reveal all is not what it seems. So there are also some people out there saying that they're afraid that they're going to shape the Jedi into some type of greater villain. Again, talking about those metaphors to imperial powers, the ones who hold the powers, that this is going to be a dissection of institutional
collapse.
Yeah, I guess is what some people were saying, that this is going to be an institutional dissection, and at the end of that, it's going to really make the Jedi look bad. I don't buy that necessarily. However, we may get a critique of the Jedi, which is nothing new.
Yeah.
Lucas started to do it as well. Now, there's a difference between a critique and casting stones at the Jedi and trying to paint them into this corner of villainy that doesn't quite work with everything we know. Now, I'm open to new interpretations. Now, what it looks to me, and based on what the showrunner said, that there may be moments where you think the Jedis are the bad guy, but that's only because of the chosen perspective that the series is taking.
Yes.
You have to remember, from everyone's perspective, no one views themselves as the villain. And if that's the case, of course, the Jedi may be painted to look like villains from their perspective, because the Sith are the sworn enemy of the Jedi. They're rivals.
Well, if you think about it too, is like the one thing I've been telling a lot of people who ask me about Acolyte, what do I think, is like I see Acolyte as kind of like the setup to Phantom Menace, meaning that the end of this story that ends with the Skywalker ending, with Anakin turning to the dark side and becoming Darth Vader. The whole reason that happens is because the Jedi became complacent. What they did to Anakin, this could be the precursor to that, where it's like we see them in their heyday, and they're not paying attention to the shadow that lurks in the darkness, much like what was established in Phantom Menace, where you have that scene with Darth Maul and Palpatine, and basically saying our time is going to be coming soon.
Right.
The Acolyte is supposed to be the precursor to this. It's the setup to basically the Skywalker legacy.
I think it's going to show how the idea of the High Republic was to show this golden age, almost like if you were to point to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings franchise or IP, the whole idea is the Jedi at this time were extremely enlightened, almost like elves.
Yes.
That's pretty much what they're being designed as or dressed as in this era of Star Wars. Now, we have to explain how they went from this enlightened group of people to something radically different. Now, the difference doesn't make them bad. It just makes it different. And the key word, David, that you used was complacent. They became complacent, arrogant, according to Yoda in Revenge of the Sith at times. And because of that, they were able to be manipulated by the forces that their arrogance didn't allow them to see. That's the mistake they made. It's not that they were evil. They made human mistake, or I should say, we're not dealing with humans here. We're dealing with the mistakes that are made by imperfect beings.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I find really funny, actually, because I actually got into a little discussion with a troll online, because I explained to them pretty succinctly, if you're worried about the Jedi being portrayed as bad guys, you haven't watched all of the movies, because in Phantom Menace, from Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones to Revenge of the Sith to even Clone Wars.
Go further back to what they did with Luke in The Last Jedi.
In The Last Jedi. And it was like, you haven't been seeing the story that they've been saying is like the Jedi have been complacent. And because of that, you had this like disease of the Sith just creep into their ranks and then destroyed them from within. And the person basically just answers me right away, well, I never liked the prequels. And I'm like, okay.
Well, then you're not a Star Wars fan.
You're not a Star Wars fan then because like you're not
you
actually
like-
paying attention to the story.
Yeah, you like 3 movies.
Yeah.
You're not a Star Wars fan. You like 3
You like 3
movies that
movies.
were produced like 40 plus years ago. Yeah, I don't really talk to people like that. When they say they don't like the prequels and they end up disliking more movies and more content than they actually like, then well, can you really call yourself a Star Wars fan? Or are you
Yeah.
just a fan of these specific movies and comic books?
Then how that's why I tell people is like if you're going to judge this,
That's not me gatekeeping because
Yeah.
they're not even inside the gates. They're clinging to the gate.
they're killing to the
So
gate.
that's not even me saying you can't come in. You are saying you can't,
Can't
come in.
because like you already were given the story that the creators of this story were telling you, and yet you're being you're saying nope, that doesn't exist, that does not exist.
Yeah.
Well, were you the creator? You weren't. So you have to take the pieces that you're given of a story and say this is what the story they're telling. And if you're going to ignore it, I can't help you there. I can't help you.
So, Dave, just to delve a little further into some controversy, Forbes put together an interesting article from Paul Tazzi, the senior contributor at Forbes, and he pretty much concisely laid out the controversy. So I'm just going to read from his article because he verbalizes these problems far better than I can on the fly. So the title of the article is The Acolyte Controversy is Absurd, even for Star Wars fans. The Acolyte has received both its first trailer and release date, as the new Star Wars project will arrive rather soon on June 4th, 2024. The trailer showed off what essentially seems to be a Sith serial killer hunting down Jedi in an effort to fix an imbalance of power between Force users. And there may be some amount of revenge in there too, for all we know. So he goes into the controversy. Naturally, controversy has erupted from the trailer, and perhaps not what you were thinking. He says, while I'm sure there are woke accusations somewhere out there about its Asian and black leads, that's not what is being discussed the most. I haven't seen much people complain about black and Asian. I saw the way certain people, the woke comments have come from how the people look.
Yes.
It's not their race or their skin color necessarily. It's the way they're designed. Some people have even referenced CW-like characters. So rather than it being the typical woke controversy, it's the idea that the show is retconning existing Star Wars lore by having the Sith in this time period. Now, this is based on a specific prequel quote. I believe we all remember this from, Kai Adi-Mundi? Is that how you say that Jedi's name?
Ki-Adi-Mundi.
What is it? Ki-Adi-Mundi?
Ki-Adi-Mundi.
I don't know. It's made up, David, so
No,
it's
I
not a
love-
real name, so I'm just going to say it however.
I love that Jedi Master, Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Yeah, a member of the Jedi Council, in which he declared that it was impossible that the Sith were attacking, as he says the Sith have been extinct for a millennium. Okay, so the idea here is that the Acolyte is breaking canon by inserting Sith into the High Republic era, which instead started several hundred years ago and ended about 80 years before Order 66. The Acolyte specifically is 100 years before the Phantom Menace. Okay, so this, of course, is absurd for a number of reasons. Just because the Sith were not around in mass like the Old Republic days does not mean they did not exist and were hiding in the shadows,
Yeah.
which is apparently exactly what is happening in the Acolyte. We know that's what was happening. Do you think Palpatine just suddenly pooped into existence?
Into existence. Do you not remember? As I said, do you not remember the scene with Darth Maul and Palpatine where they're just saying, "Our time will come soon."
Yeah. Apparently, Palpatine and Maul are like that of the Big Bang, and they just snapped into existence.
Snap into existence.
this part I don't have a problem with, and this is where I get annoyed with certain Star Wars fans.
Yes.
I'm like, guys,
Same here.
there are so many ways to make this work in ways that you're not even stopping to think critically about.
Yeah. Because you are taking words from the movie too literal. Especially like when you're thinking about, guess who actually said those exact lines that they haven't been seen for millennia? A Jedi Master who the Sith infiltrated the Jedi. That's how they led to Anakin.
They actually tackled that specific question in Revenge of the Sith. I believe it was either Revenge of the Sith or Attack of the Clones, when I believe Yoda says that the dark side has clouded everything.
Yes.
So because of the Sith being present, this power prevented the Jedi from sensing the Sith's return.
Yes.
It's explained in the prequels.
It's explained in the prequels.
They were unable to see it for whatever reason. Their complacency, their idleness, the fact that they were distracted with a war, the fact that the Sith force, or the force itself, the dark side, I should say, was influencing and skewing and obscuring things. All of it is explained in the prequels.
Yeah.
So to have a singular Sith or a group of Sith, let's say, make a rise, I don't think that's retconning anything.
No.
So this is why I say people just need to kind of chill out and relax, and let's wait to see how it's done. Now, I want to talk about the style of the Acolyte. So the creator, Leslye Headland, talks the unique perspective of her upcoming series. She said one thing to know about the show is that we've been talking about it as a mystery thriller. It is a serialized story, so each episode gives you more information about the story. Headland tells The Hollywood Reporter, she says, we were obviously influenced by samurai films and wuxia films, I believe is how you say that.
Yes.
But also films like Rashomon, where you see one story and then you see it done a different way. So alternative perspectives, which is what I was saying. So what separates Star Wars The Acolyte from some of the other Star Wars series is that it's told in that particular way, which makes it a lot more interesting. Now, if people are not familiar with wuxia, what wuxia is, everyone knows what it is.
Yes.
It is basically Chinese martial art films.
Think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah. She also compares The Acolyte, the showrunner. She compares The Acolyte, David. This is actually kind of cool. Frozen meets Kill Bill.
And that is a definite interesting way of putting it.
That is, to me, that's already unique and interesting.
Yeah.
The fact that she can compare her series to Frozen and Kill Bill.
And Kill Bill.
Now, Frozen I can do without, but we all know at this point, anyone who listens to our network knows that I'm a huge Kill Bill fan. I think it's one of Tarantino's defining works, and it is just an awesome epic, volume 1 and volume 2. So anytime a showrunner or director grabs at inspirations from those films, I'm all about it. And I'm excited for it. So it's going to be interesting to see what she does with this, because not only is she trying to say, well, listen, she's not simply trying to rework Star Wars, her version of Star Wars, into the same tired tropes and stereotypes that Star Wars has always used. Now, I'm all about genre conventions. There are certain things that you always need to do in order for something to be what it is. Let me explain what that means. Star Wars has been going on so long, it's almost like its own genre. And it was built through various through hybridity, basically, taking other genres and piecing it together. Though that is the samurai film, the spaghetti western, the John Carter of Mars series, just to name but a few. But Flash Gordon, the old serials. So when you take all of those components, what you get is a feeling and a vibe that is Star Wars. And over the course of 40 plus years, it's become almost its own genre. So there's certain things that you're always going to have to do that feels similar. But at the same time, there is room for innovation. You can bend and take those conventions and reshape them to fit your story. And that's what it sounds like Leslye Headland is doing. And I don't want to jump the gun and be overly optimistic because I've done this with nearly every single fucking new installment over at Disney Plus. But I will say, David, that the things she is saying from an sheerly from a movie fan side, she's throwing out the types of words that we like to hear.
Yes. And that's the thing that's really nice. You see someone
who understands film.
Understands film, number one.
And
but
television.
Also knows how to talk to media.
Yeah.
And like automatically that makes me really comfortable. I mean, she's been able to do something that a lot of people that have done Star Wars up to this point, me and you have criticized that you need to get off of social media.
Yeah. Well, not only that, dude, like when you hear Favreau and Filoni talk about any upcoming project they're working on. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Filoni, but they don't talk about the nature of the craft.
Yeah.
They talk about nerd Star Wars stuff.
They talk about what they want.
Yes, they talk about nerd Star Wars things.
I'm a great fan of Star Wars, and I know about the history of Star Wars.
That's usually how it starts.
Yes. You don't hear anyone actually talk about
the craft. Like the sources of inspiration, not just, well, like Mando, or I should say Favreau did with Mandalorian. Well, this is a Western, and that's all he says.
Yes.
Which it's not a Western, but he says it's a Western. Leslye Headland goes into detail and shows her actual deep understanding of film form and cinematic history, and then using those components to shape her series. That's what I keep hearing in all of her interviews. She talks about the craft of writing. She talks about what they're doing differently in the writing room. David, how many times do I talk about these things when we hear these PR junkets and you hear them talk about asinine things?
Yes.
And I'm like, talk about the writing. I want to hear what your plans are, your strategies. That's exactly what she's doing.
Talk about your work.
She's talking about the strategy behind her work, David. This is what we always want.
And that's the thing. I don't care about your political point of view as a filmmaker. What I care about is, how do you do your work?
Do you have knowledge?
Do you have knowledge?
Do you belong in that chair?
Can you tell me why you chose this type of genre as a writer? Can you tell me that you understand this type of writing because you've read it before?
And David, that's the only reason why I'm not overly pessimistic like a lot of Star Wars fans right now, because she's literally talking about the things that we on this network always talk about, how showrunners, producers, actors should be talking about when discussing their projects. Talk about the craft, what you're doing. Let us know you have a handle on what you're about to release to the masses. And when she talks about the writing room specifically and this idea that she has writers in her room that have never even seen Star Wars, I think that's brilliant. Yeah. I think that's a good idea. She's the uber Star Wars fan. She's the one who knows everything about Star Wars. And because she's the leader in that room, that's all that really matters. If you have a good balance of people who have seen Star Wars, then you have the people who truly understand Star Wars at its deepest core, and then you have people who are not quite familiar with Star Wars. That's a smart way to bring about a series that doesn't feel overly conflated with nostalgia and fan service, and more focused on what? The strategy of narrative.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, you know what? It's so weird to me that all the filmmakers up to this point in Star Wars, we started, you know, when I look back at see how Clone Wars was written, or even Rebels, where you had Filoni act as what? A filmmaker or producer of a product, and actually talk about stuff like that and leave the nerd shit to Pablo Hidalgo.
Yeah.
Pablo Hidalgo would be the guy that the quote unquote gatekeeper of Star Wars, the vault keeper of knowledge. And he'd be the one saying, oh yeah, this has to deal with this piece of knowledge. This has to deal with this bit of canon. Now everyone feels that they have to be Pablo. They forget that basically they're there as a writer. Tell me what you're about to do as a writer. Or tell me what you're doing as a showrunner.
What?
I don't care if you know, like, Kiara Mundi, or like you can name all of the Jedi Council at a sitting.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, as long as there's checks and balances that will make sure you're not retconning things
Yeah.
or throwing things in there that don't make sense to Star Wars. But yeah, you're absolutely right, David. I don't give a fuck how many times you've watched New Hope.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I don't care. I'm gonna be looking at you saying, all right, tell me what you're writing, what your narrative's about.
Because I know plenty of people who've watched Star Wars, millions of times, and they can't write for shit.
And it's
So that's not like credentials. Your knowledge of Star Wars doesn't give you credentials to write.
yeah, and it's so funny too because I was blinded by basically, a lot of filmmakers like Filoni say, well, we don't want to give out spoilers, we don't want to give too many details. You're not giving me details. You're telling me about your process. What is your process? If you're writing this type of story, what inspired you? What inspired you about the story? Oh no, that's too much of a spoiler. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
You're not giving me character details. That's the thing that I find really frustrating nowadays, especially now. This goes into like our thoughts on the status of filmmaking. I think a lot of people think they can be filmmakers nowadays, especially with the advent of YouTube. But they don't know really what it takes about the process.
Yeah.
They don't.
Well, David, this is why I'm slightly optimistic about this series, David, because
Exactly.
I see a lot of green flags. Is that the proper way of saying positive things? Not red flags. Green flags.
Green flags. Let's call them green flags.
Let's just call them green flags for the sake of argument here. Because, Dave, so not only did Leslye Headland already helm a very successful series on Netflix titled Russian Doll,
Oh
which
my
was
God, dude.
very, very well written.
Yes.
Not just well written, actually the content itself is extremely deep and very intelligent. But she started as a writer on a TV show that's executive produced by Sean Ryan, the creator of The Shield and the man that gave Kurt Sutter his real start. So she was working under the wings of one of the greatest showrunners in modern television.
Yeah. And that's ultimately, that's your calling card. That's your calling card. Like if I were to actually interview Leslye Headland, I would focus on that. Tell me about your process that you learned from Russian Doll. What did you learn from actually being that producer? Then that's how you deal with these press junkets.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like I saw I think it was like a press junket for Acolyte where people were asking actors about like certain other characters they don't even portray. And these actors, I felt sorry for them because they have to just stand there and say, oh yeah, I know about that character. Uh-huh. But inside, you can tell by their facial features, like, I don't give a shit about like this character that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Leslye Headland, number one, won me over with how she's dealing with the press. Not just with this particular, but just in overall. How when Acolyte came out, you notice there wasn't much chat or social media like actors coming out. This is what my character portrays, and this is what it means for what I imagine what they mean to me. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Instead, you have the actual show producer like Leslye Headland leading the way and basically making these press junkets. This is what we're all about.
She sounds like a TV nerd, and that's what I like. I want a TV and movie nerd leading movies and shows.
Well, because that means that she's knowledgeable of how like a TV show should work.
It's like Anthony Mackie, the guy that plays not the Winter Soldier, Falcon. And he's now the new Captain America. I love hearing that guy talk on the red carpet and in PR interviews. He always brings the conversation back to the craft.
Yes.
He's another really good interviewee who knows how to talk about the content itself.
Yeah. And it's very, very much like, I hate to say it, when you put Leslye, the way Leslye Headland has been managing the PR for Acolyte,
Mm-hmm.
and you compare it to say like even like Favreau, you kind of look at Favreau and basically go, dude, you should know better because you've been in this business longer than she has.
Yeah. Listen, just because there are plenty of directors out there, Boll is one of them, who shouldn't be directing, David. Now, I'm not saying Favreau shouldn't direct, but just because he has directed movies doesn't mean he knows everything about movies.
Yeah.
He just knows how to manage a film set.
But you need to know how to hype up and treat your product.
Some of the best writers and directors in television and movie are the ones who know the ins and outs of the movie industry, meaning the history, as well as understanding the craft, the roots of craft, and the historical nuance that's created much of our ideas behind the craft of directing, writing, etc. Now, I'm hoping I'm not talking Leslye Headland up too much, and then the series sucks.
Yes.
My idea of suck, David, is just simply a series that Ahsoka. I liked much of Ahsoka, but it's written really poorly. The Mandalorian is written really poorly. When I talk about a series written extremely well, we're talking about Bad Batch Season 3 and Season 1 and 2, and I'm talking about Andor. Those are properly written shows. I'm talking, and of course, I'm focusing on just the more recent. I can go further back. Nearly all of Filoni's animations are great.
Yeah.
From the Star Wars side. Okay, David, let's switch gears just a bit and talk about something else that's pretty damn cool. Star Wars Acolyte showrunner Leslye Headland once again talking about the craft and offers a little critique on this current trend of shooting on the volume. This is why I'm liking her more and more, David. So she says, while the volume is a great filmmaking tool, hold on. She says, some additional insight. Nope, that's not it either.
Don't worry.
So she goes into talking about that they are pulling back on this series from using the volume. In fact, there is nothing that was shot for this series that used or utilized the volume, which is basically what we keep talking about, the AR wall.
Yes.
The virtual production set.
I think that's what you have to clear up. It's like a lot of people don't know what the volume is.
It's the virtual production that majority of The Mandalorian has been shot on, and it was cool, and it was a novel idea during that first season, but since then, the series is actually constrained and drastically limited when shooting in such a confined space. Even though you're using virtual space, there's only so much room that physical objects and people can move in a virtual environment.
Yeah.
And if you know what to look for, shows that are using this volume tend to start feeling very limited. The overall diegesis, the story world, you feel constrained.
Yeah, and that's the thing about what Leslye...
That's why Ahsoka didn't have great fight scenes, among other reasons, because how can you jump and do Jedi techniques when you're shooting in a confined virtual environment? You can't.
And that's the thing that I liked about what Leslye Headland started off saying is like, the volume's a great filmmaking tool.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. It's innovative. Yeah. Would I want to use it as a filmmaker? Absolutely, but it would depend on what I'm using it for. I'm not going to use volume like for everything.
Yeah.
It is not my go-to for everything. It might be to some because of like the benefits, but that's the thing. When it comes down to it, it is a tool for the craft of filmmaking.
Yeah.
It's not the end all be all.
She wanted to have more of a physical look, even though maybe the typical viewer can't really pinpoint when you're using practical sets versus, visual effects. But I think most people can tell the difference if you point it out. And there is something to be said about the physical nature of an actual set, the tangibility. And the fact that she's pulling away from that and wanting to do something more similar in line with Andor. In fact, I believe she said that, don't quote me, but I believe she said in another interview that she actually is using more practical sets than even Andor used.
Yeah, and you can actually tell that is one of the things that really stuck out with me in the trailer is like everything looks very, I guess the right word is practical. Everything looks very organic. It looks like it's there. They're actually, those sets, they look okay. They look very physical, When you use volume, everything looks flat. And it's like you almost see it as kind of like a two-dimensional.
Yeah.
It looks like a video game where there's kind of like that uncanny valley type of effect that it has. But when you watch the trailer, it really looks like, oh, they're standing right there in that set.
Yeah, there isn't the depth issues that the volume shooting creates.
It's why the when she brings up the fact that, oh, we take our inspiration from wushu and samurai films. Wushu films are fantastic because why? They use wire work and practical effects to do their martial arts. And it is incredible what some of those images look like when you compare it to something shot on like volume, where just like you said, if you shoot it on volume, you can't get those effects. You can't get the guy flipping 10 feet in the air.
Yeah. There's a specific look.
There's a specific look you get.
Yeah. With wire work. Like, especially if you look at what they did with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh my God.
Wait, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where the visuals there are just gorgeous. And there's that one point in the trailer where that really caught me off guard because I was like going, oh, that's not CGI'd. That's actually wire work right there, where it's particularly in one of the fight scenes where I think it was the Jedi Master does like a backflip, and you could actually compare it to like, say, Marvel, where in Marvel, you can see the actor kind of jump up in the air and it turns into a CGI actor, like in a volume.
There's
lands.
There's a inhuman fluidity to the way they jump.
To the way they jump.
Yeah.
In the trailer, oh no, that's not there. That's actually him jumping up in the air, getting pulled by wires and then doing a flip and then landing.
Yeah.
And there's something organic about that actually fits the Jedi, the storytelling in the Star Wars universe.
What did you say it was? What's the word you just used? It was when saying it's organic.
Organic.
Yeah. Well, the thing about movies is it's all artifice. It's all created, but that doesn't mean something organic looking can't be created through artifice. That's the art of filmmaking. So when we say something looks more grounded, it doesn't mean they're not doing tricks. It just means that there's ways to make things look a little more grounded. That's the art of artifice, to convince us that we're not looking at something that can actually happen.
See, one thing I actually found that actually sets that really in my brain, that basically Headland knows what she's doing, is like in the article that I'm seeing right now, talking further about her feels on volume. She actually says it was a long, and there was, as you could see from the trailer, a lot of martial arts, she said. So we had an incredible stunt team that did some incredible wire work, and talent did a lot of their own action. Headland also humorously noted that star Amanda Sternberg was dubbed Bruce Lee on the set due to her proficiency doing her own stunts. She was too fast. We were like, you have to slow down because we can't tell that it's your face. You look like a stunt double because you're going too quickly.
Well, as long as, David, these people are capable, because a lot of people on the set of Ahsoka also did their own stunts, and they looked like crotchety, Alzheimer-ridden people that can't move.
Yes, that is true. That is true. I really felt sorry for Ahsoka because there were some fight scenes. I know
the actor that played Sabine.
She was stiff.
She was extremely stiff during certain fight scenes. Rose, what's her name? I was about to call her Rose McGowan. Ahsoka. Why is her name eludes me?
Oh, I forgot her name now.
What? Oh my God. How is this even possible, David?
We got to look this up. One sec.
We got to look this up. How did we forget? There's just too many names we're throwing out today.
Yeah, there's too many names. Where is it?
Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson.
Yeah. Even Rosario Dawson looked like she could, barely move at times.
Well, that's the thing that was frustrating with Rosario Dawson, was because there were some fight scenes in Ahsoka that I really liked, and they did well. Like the samurai moment when she kills the one Sith Inquisitor. Fantastic. That was a cool scene. And you saw that Rosario Dawson knew what she was doing. But then toward the end, some of the fight scenes, you're like going, you're not moving properly. What the heck happened? And then you You see, or even like her fight scene with Anakin, with Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
You can tell that basically Rosario Dawson knows what she's doing, but for some strange reason, other fight scenes, she looks like no one knows what they were doing on set at that day.
Yeah. I mean, we could sum up that aspect or that problem with it simply being. I can't even talk, David. We could sum up that entire point by just simply saying that the choreography overall on Ahsoka wasn't great.
Wasn't great.
There were good moments, but overall, it looked very poor in quality. It resembled low budget television from the 90s.
And you know what I was started thinking about, going back to how this connects to this article, the volume. When you think about like Ahsoka and how they used the volume, the AR wall, you start being realized that basically a lot of the fight scenes that they did with the volume were really restrictive. So like, because it's so restrictive, those actors have to do extra work.
Yeah.
To try to make it look good.
Right. Correct.
And like when you don't have that, then you get the really bad moments that you see in Ahsoka. And you can tailor that to why a lot of filmmakers like Leslye Headland are now looking at the use of the volume, the AR wall, saying I could use that sporadically, but I can't use it specifically for other things.
Yeah. All right, so just to end our discussion on the Acolyte, let's end it on a positive note here. And this should be good news to a lot of Star Wars fans out there, because she's even using the real terminology here, the showrunner, Leslye Headland. She adds in this interview, David, there's also a lot of stuff from the EU I got to utilize. Nobody stopped me, so I did it. So if you're a fan, there will be a species that you might recognize. There are also certain narrative elements. Basically, there are enough Easter eggs if you're a fan of the original trilogy, the prequels, or the Clone Wars, and then there's some EU sprinkled in. So she's also trying to do right by the fans as well. And the fact that she even has knowledge, I believe she's the first director/showrunner besides Filoni that has actually used the term EU, the expanded universe. So the fact that she's even using the proper designations and abbreviations for some of these things goes to show you that she has the knowledge.
Yeah.
I feel like most of us can just rest easy at this point because what I see is a lot of positive.
Yeah.
And not a lot of negative. I will wait till I see the series, and then if there's some negative there, believe me, I'm going to take them to task. Yes. All right, David. So we only have a few more minutes left. Let's talk about the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch, the final season soundtrack has been released on Spotify, Apple, and more, and understandably so. This is the quickest they've gotten these soundtracks out, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the music this year, well, Kenner, who does the soundtrack, he always puts out great work. Kevin Kenner did it for Rebels. He has also scored all of Bad Batch up to this point. But there is something about the third season of Bad Batch that overall it might end up being, depending how it ends. Now, we're not going to get into spoilers if you haven't watched it. If you haven't and you're listening to this show, shame on you. I will say, David, that so far, what they've offered us in Bad Batch Season 3, I will be as bold to say that the Bad Batch, along with Andor, are probably two of the best things we've been given in the Disney era of Star Wars, by far.
I am going to back you up even more with that. I think that the third season of Bad Batch
is on a whole fucking other level.
It's on a whole other level where I would even take this season of Bad Batch over Andor.
Really?
Dude, without giving anything away, this third season of Bad Batch, it hits me so hard in what's happening to the character. And yeah, it's the final season, and we're seeing the conclusion of a lot of these characters that we've grown to really like. But Filoni, with his animation storytelling, he has this way of always making the last moments of this particular story, whether it's Clone Wars, whether it's Rebels, to leave their audience, their fans, just emotionally so attached to these characters that's the reason why we love a character like Ahsoka, like a character like Ezra. Bad Batch is so different because like I love every single one of these characters.
See, and that's an interesting point, Dave. When you say that we're emotionally attached,
We are emotionally attached to them.
That's something that writers for any form of visual media, whether it be movies or TV, you have to be able to connect the audience with those characters at an intimate level. And that's something that much of the new Star Wars has not been able to do. Even though there are things that I love about Force Awakens, there are things that I love about Solo, there are things that I love about Rogue One. I can walk out the theater and not really think about it again at an emotional level.
At an emotional level.
At the end of every episode of Bad Batch, I'm like, fuck. At the end of every episode of Andor, I'm like, oh man, this is going someplace.
This is going someplace.
You care about these people. You are invested in these characters. And that's the thing that Bad Batch has done since day one. The first 2 seasons were very, very strong. Some of the best Star Wars we've been given up to that point. But season 3 is on a whole other level in all categories. Music, design, acting, writing, the chosen visuals. Everything just comes together in this way that feels like Star Wars. When I was talking to you a moment ago, David, about working within the framework of Star Wars and not deviating, but also offering something new that you can say, well, this is what I brought to Star Wars. This is what Bad Batch does.
Yeah.
The showrunner of Bad Batch completely understands the world of Star Wars and what makes Star Wars. But that doesn't mean they're veering into the same tired territory over and over and over. They're doing new things within the fertile grounds of Star Wars, within that well-known framework that all of us have come to expect that will be inside that framework of Star Wars. That's what Bad Batch is doing.
Oh, yeah. And it says a lot when I tell people, like, if you think about what Filoni has done, every single series he's done, there's always been one character that stands out that we carry on as fans past.
Crosshair.
Exactly.
Dude, he's my favorite, man.
You go from Clone Wars, where everyone brought Ahsoka, right? That's everyone's favorite. Rebels, it's Ezra. Ezra by far is like everyone's favorite.
I love Rebels too.
But
I probably
then
should have added them.
You get to Bad Batch, and this particular season, I was talking to people. People will remember Omega. They'll remember Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, especially Crosshair this season, because my God, that guy's narrative went from being in the background for season 1 and 2, and he is the backbone of this season because he's like he is the prodigal brother come back.
I want people to understand when we say you have to work for it, you can't just do something with a character and expect everyone to rally behind this character and be emotionally attached. You have to do your work.
You have to do your work.
And that's this. The 3rd season of Bad Batch is a perfect example of a writer working. They worked so hard in order to create what we feel now in season 3. They worked for it. They didn't just drop it on us and expect us to like what they gave us. They worked towards it. You're right about Crosshair. He was, I wouldn't say he's in the background. He was definitely on Simmer. But he was always, the idea and his storyline was there. It was to offer an alternative perspective. It created a different type of dynamic that we haven't quite seen in Star Wars before. And now by bringing him back into the mix, it creates so many more avenues for interplay between characters, discussions, understanding the socio-political and political ramifications of the world and the time they live in, the existential thoughts that are the existential notions, I should say, that are being used to craft the entire run of Bad Batch. If you had to point to one ideological worldview, I would say it's the idea of existentialism, the idea of finding meaning and purpose in a world that there is no meaning and purpose for these clones.
Yeah.
They were designed for a specific task that task is no longer around. How do you move forward? How do you live? How do you find new purpose? Well, over the course of the last 3 seasons, that's what we have been witnessing. We've been witnessing this avid search for meaning and purpose. Now that they're no longer important or needed, it's an amazing, story.
And that's the thing, is kind of like I would take Bad Batch season 3 over Andor at this point, because like,
do you think though that's just because of?
Emotionally.
Do you think that's just because of the historical relevance now behind Bad Batch, because we've had 3 seasons as opposed to Andor and we've only had 1? Or do you think it is just miles ahead?
I think it's miles ahead because of like the way that the narrative has gone for Bad Batch season 3. Technically for me, you could watch Bad Batch season 3 and totally understand the story, what's going on right now. And with Andor was fantastic. Visually, every single production value of Andor was fantastic, and I would score it above a lot of Star Wars.
Yep.
But with Bad Batch takes it that one step above Andor, where it's kind of like entered that category for me now. One of my favorite series of all time is Band of Brothers. And that it was an HBO show that basically told this a World War II miniseries. And that type of storytelling was so visceral. And that's what Bad Batch has. Bad Batch has like this visceral type of storytelling when it comes to telling about a narrative about band of brothers, these brothers getting together, this family trying to actually survive through this tumultuous time in the galaxy. And it's all these brothers are all tied together by this one kid in Omega, who's like almost gone from she's the smaller sister to all of a sudden the eldest. She's almost treated like the eldest sister in season 3, which is hilarious when you look at the dynamic.
That's one of the best things about it, is that you see her maturity. And even in like episode 4, where Omega literally tells Crosshair, "You're my little brother."
You're my little brother. Oh my God, dude. Let's not go into too much detail, because that scene, that was one of those scenes that hit me, because it was kind of like, it was the realization that she's the eldest here and she's still this little kid. And Filoni has a way of making younger characters look so mature for their age, like Ezra. When Ezra gets to the final season of Rebels, he is the man at that point.
It's wisdom.
Wisdom.
Isn't that kind of at the end of almost every real major Star Wars story, that our protagonist reaches a moment of wisdom,
and he out wisdoms everyone else.
He out wisdoms. I like that. He out wisdoms. He outgrew freaking Kanan in the end. Even in Rebels, with the ending of Maul's story, what defeated Maul? Wisdom. And it was like, when you get to Bad Batch, it even means more when you watch season 1 to season 3. The growth of Omega is better than Ahsoka's and Ezra's, because it feels so natural, but then it gives that twist that, wait a minute, she's been the eldest this whole time. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree, because I feel like I do agree with you, but before I can definitively say, yes, you are right 100%, I need to wait till we get to the end.
Yes.
But I like everything you're saying. I can't disagree.
But we could go on. I don't want to go into too much spoilers, because you almost went into one of the big spoilers, because that scene, wow, the look on Crosshair's face when he hears her say that.
Yeah. And listen, I made a very definitive choice about 5 years ago that I was going to quit buying Star Wars toys, that it's time to end those habits, that Disney isn't worthy of my cash. But now I have on pre-order from Sideshow the Crosshair figure.
You gotta get the Crosshair.
They always
figure.
fucking win, David. At the end of all of this, capitalism wins.
Well, just wait. You'll get the Crosshair one, and then you'll go, oh wait, it's not complete without the others.
Don't. All right, let's end our show. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you are new to our show, you can find all of our episodes, past, present, and in the future, wherever you listen to podcasts, just search Star Wars from the Bacta Tank. Our preferred aggregators are Apple Music as well as Spotify because of their rating and review system. So please head on over there and give us a rating and review. And YouTube viewers, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you, David.
Thank you. May the Force be with us.